Hey there, welcome to episode 158 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 8:03 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here in Greater Vegas on this Tuesday, February 24, 2026. We normally publish on Tuesday morning, so this works out nicely. You can hear already my voice is not going to be cooperating today. The weather in Vegas has been all over the place, and it has a direct impact on my ability to speak, which is it makes podcasting a challenge. Today's title and topic: the wrong ways. This is mostly about trying to connect with people, to share information, to reach out, to enable discovery. The wrong ways. We got them all. We got them all here in Vegas. If you're not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation or perhaps the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, let me tell you what, you've come to the right place. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation is a Nevada nonprofit corporation, a 501c3 public charity. We formed in June of 2022. We were a reboot of the original Code for Vegas, which was part of Code for America. Code for America has ended their brigade program. And we, somewhere in there, also renamed ourselves from Code for Vegas to Innovate for Vegas, because innovation can take many forms, and just about anybody can do it. That was not necessarily true with the Code for moniker. So that was a good change, and it coincided nicely with the brigade program's ending. So we are a completely standalone organization. We are pursuing innovation of all forms, and we would love to work with all comers, people who are interested in turning ideas into action in pretty much any way. Is where we're headed. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation. Now, the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, this you're listening to it right now, is about some of our initiatives, some of our tools and methods, our approach, and more lately we'll be talking about the Smarter Smart City Challenge, which is a kind of a big swing to try to get more people to take a look outside their window, maybe look in their backyard, and see what are some of the things that could be better, could be done differently, could be done in a more useful way, could improve the lives of many, including themselves perhaps, could elevate their communities, and so on. So making our smart city smarter doesn't mean writing an application or putting up a website or tweeting about something. It might mean just taking a look at what's around and making it better, making it smarter. So that can take many forms. Innovation takes many forms. Making a smart city smarter does as well. So we'll be talking about that a lot in the coming year. Not every week, but we'll cover it every once in a while. Here, we're going to reflect a little bit on trying to get the word out about this. And this is a topic we've talked about a few times here and there, but it's particularly poignant now. So we're going to reflect a little bit on what this actually means. The wrong ways. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary, which I'll read to you. It is 2 sentences. The links are, as usual, there are several links that could be included here, but we'll save that for later through the year. We're going to be learning a lot, or we will learn nothing, which will also be a lot. We'll talk about that later in the coming weeks. So on that note, now it's 8:08. Time flies. The summary of today's episode: we have been trying out Luma, Luma, as a calendar platform, and of course LinkedIn. We know about that one. And remember, not everything is software. The case for building for purpose. We've talked about building for purpose previously, so I'm really going to be kind of preloading this ongoing conversation with some specific cases that I myself have encountered in recent weeks, certainly through the month of February 2026. The links for today's episode, as usual, the Innovate for Vegas activity homepage, Innovate for Vegas, that's all one word, Innovate FOR Vegas, no space. .org, innovateforvegas.org. That's where we keep track of our initiatives and the people participating in them. That could be you. You just have to actually take some action. So innovateforvegas.org is sort of our day-to-day, here's what we're up to. Hosted on GitHub, by the way. Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Innovate FOR Vegas, period foundation, spelled out FOUNDATION. That's our business website. I did mention we're a Nevada nonprofit corporation. So that's where you would find the boring stuff like directors on our board of directors and other documents. We're in our 4th fiscal year. The first 3 fiscal years, we were bound by the 1023-EZ filing, which we pursued and completed, to $50,000 in annual gross receipts. We never reached anywhere near that, but we did file our 990 postcard return. Hopefully this year we'll have some more interestingness as we pursue the Smarter Smart City Challenge. We are the fiscal sponsor of this undertaking. There may be other facilitators, but we are at present the lone and primary, those are basically the same thing, I think, facilitator of this endeavor. But InnovateForVegas.Foundation is the company side of the coin, if you will. It's 2 sides of that coin. The InnovateForVegas.org is about what we're actually doing day to day, week to week, month to month, and so on. There is a link on our InnovateForVegas.org website to the Luma calendar for as long as we're using it. So I don't want to link to it in the links because it might be fleeting, but you can find that and everything else on our website, the .org website for now. It'll appear, it might be on the foundation website, but we use it for our, we have weekly office hours. We used to have our initiative meetups on Mondays, but nobody was attending. So we have to rejigger how those work and get people to actually participate in the initiatives themselves. It is not to be mistaken as just to come by and hang out meetup. So there's really no point in having it if nobody's working on anything. The office hours are intended to be an open forum of conversation about civic volunteerism, cohorts, etc. It is not necessarily, in fact, it's really not intended at all to be a technical or highly detailed meetup. It's much more conversational and so what is this all about and that kind of thing. That is on our Luma calendar. There are some shortcomings with Luma. It's been an interesting experiment, but that's what we're going to talk about today. Oh, also the smart-city.vegas site, which is focused on the Smarter Smart City Challenge, is very much a work in progress as we approach the early sign-up date of March 1st. And then it will be sort of the hub of activity, ideally, through the challenge timeline, which starts March 1st and ends sometime in January of 2027. So you have plenty of time to participate at your own pace. The tools are not great. In these modern times, the internets and thus a variety of, I'm sorry if I feel like I'm hitting the S's, too much hiss. My apologies. The internets and thus a variety of platforms and their tools are commonly used to reach people, to inform, to entertain, and so on. The number of tools that everybody uses by default has contracted in recent years as more popular platforms have become the things to use, the de facto standards, even though they're not good. And in fact, there are now congressional hearings and lawsuits and so on concerning how these platforms have possibly harmed young people, have certainly been a distraction to everyone, have been completely and totally dominated by bots with an agenda, with political, some people have called them psychological operations to skew elections and change public opinion. They've certainly become monetizing platforms. Can you tell I'm a big fan? So social media is not great for social networking. People have now basically leaned completely into sharing photos and videos of everything. There is no real, LinkedIn and is identical to Instagram at this point. So sharing pictures and videos has dominated the world. Social networking itself is not great for social networking either. Again, LinkedIn, the value of LinkedIn is the social network graph, but it is basically distilled down to an algorithmic display of images and videos and structured posts that satisfy the algorithm and are not necessarily ideal for people. So the network itself has some value, but even that is diminishing in my opinion. And for example, microblog platforms like Twitter and Blue Sky are not great for reach unless there's an existing following. So you really need to have thousands of followers before you're ever really noticed on these platforms, especially if people choose algorithmic feeds rather than explicit who am I following and what are they saying to me. LinkedIn is the same problem. This is generally the deal, is that platforms choose to offer interesting things to keep people on their platform and thus to serve them more ads. You can read Cory Doctorow's book on the topic. I've mentioned it many times, Cory Doctorow, in Poopification, but you know how to spell that correctly. So all these are only more popular. I'm sorry, they're more difficult as they become more popular with algorithmic feeds of thousands, tens of thousands, larger crowds, some automated bots, some humans. Who knows what the ratio is? But there's a ton of noise and automation and whatnot, so you may or may not actually be getting the things that you want to find. You're getting the things that an algorithm believes you want to find, so that you'll stick around longer, maybe get a dopamine rush, and they can serve you polarizing advertising and whatnot. There are sites that are more community-ish, like Discord, which is having its own issues now with age verification and some other conspiracy theories. Private conversations are a little bit tricky when you do mix age variation into the mix, when you put age variation into the mix. So these are all things to be aware of, but they've also created this very weird environment for engagement with other people that when you're not engaging them in person, these platforms have become a thing, a life all their own, perhaps. In our early days in 2022 and into 2023, many of the people expressing interest in participating in our community elevation efforts asked us why we don't just simply use WordPress as a platform on which to build things. Can't we just use WordPress? This was disappointing because this represented a bit of a capitulation to the status quo, and we were pursuing innovation. You can create something on WordPress. You don't need to join a nonprofit. You don't have to create a nonprofit to do that. Have at it. But we're trying to be innovative here. We're trying to think outside the box, not how can we make an existing plugin do what we want. And there are certainly examples of that demonstrate why this is not actually innovation. It's implementation. It's integration, perhaps, but not particularly innovative. There is a case for using an existing platform for development, but WordPress is designed to enable some innovation, but not require it. Just find the plugins that do kind of what you want and go with that. So they don't require innovation to do something interesting with WordPress. That's sort of their business model, and it is an open source platform with problems. In my opinion, is the easy way out. Why do something innovative when we can just open a can and pour it into a pot? You might say to a chef, and you would not get a happy look from a real chef. These are software tools, but in general, the foundation of a community, like people, a city, a county, a locality, or region in general, these foundations revolve around information sharing, which should be in both directions, by the way. Like from a government or an agency or some organization or resources or entities serving the population, and then the population being able to communicate back. Right? So it's a two-way street, ideally, and to enable access to resources. These sound simple, piece of cake, easy words to string together, but they are not, which is something we may discover as people share and pursue ideas in, here comes a plug, the Smarter Smart City Challenge through this year. So thanks for letting me plug that. There is a lot of room for improvement and, yes, innovation. So let's start with some of the usual suspects, not the platforms, but the goals. When and where? One of the things you may find mentioned in studies and assertion papers and so on is the need for a community calendar in any ecosystem, not just Vegas, although certainly in Vegas. Think about it. You probably use a calendar at work for some things like scheduling meetings, deliverables, deliveries, could be anything. You probably use them at home. Maybe you have a calendar on the refrigerator. If you've got family members with their own schedules and so on, it's kind of a synchronizing home base. Here's what's going on this week, this month. Here's where we need to be. Here's where we need to go pick up or drop off, et cetera, et cetera. The calendar can be written on a dry erase board, on a pre-printed calendar. Maybe it's hanging on the refrigerator. Maybe it's hanging up on a wall. Maybe it has cool pictures. I knew someone who had a different calendar on each wall of each room. Take that for what it's worth. Maybe you are using any of the myriad of calendar tools available just about everywhere at this point on your computer, your laptop, your tablet, your phone, etc. The nice thing about calendars, they have a lot of default assumptions about how they work that are pretty sensible. A calendar is fairly recognizable, even if a single day is presented, or maybe a 1 week view, a daily agenda, a weekly calendar, a whole month, maybe a whole year. We have some idea. We have some idea about a day, a time, maybe a place out in the world, or nowadays perhaps a virtual meetup. So one single day or a whole month can represent these things in a way that people kind of understand. They're pretty standardized now. It's hard to surprise people with calendars on the surface. The other nice thing about calendars, they interoperate in the analog and digital worlds even, although getting between analog and digital is a little bit of effort. Often a digital calendar looks like an analog calendar, the grid, month views especially. And the calendars in the digital world can talk to each other in a low assumption exchange to synchronize with each other and to share in that synchronization the status of events, updated venues, times, whether it's canceled even. These standards have been around for a long time. And if you are a digital calendar, if you are a digital calendar tool, that would be funny. If you use a digital calendar tool that supports CalDave and iCalendar streams, for examples, and you probably do if you're using Google Calendar, Outlook calendars, Apple calendars. Apple has actually played a pretty strong role in the iCalendar standard to exchange data between calendars. Outlook and Google, Outlook especially too. Outlook calendars have kind of set the standard for a long time because of their office history, as in being used by office people in offices to conduct business. Your tools can work with the tools of others if they just follow these long-term and fairly well-established standards. They're not perfect, but they work. It isn't always clear that this is the case. There are some WordPress plugins that people use. I'm not going to name the sites here in Vegas, but somebody has created these platforms that are pretty awful. They're pretty awful. They rely on WordPress plugins for events. They don't do a great job of proper interoperability. Kind of the bare minimum, but just not quite right. It can be done. So that's the what and the where. I'm sorry, the when and the where. Where are we going for this meetup and when is it? Right? Calendars, maybe a map link or a Zoom or Jitsi Meet link, etc. These are these exist and are almost ubiquitous and can be used at extremely reasonable, like maybe zero cost. So this is low-hanging fruit, especially at community, locality, and region scale. What about who and what? There's a thing called an asset map. You can look that up. Have we talked about that before? I think I talked about it on the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I do a lot of audio program production, so I think I've mentioned it there. It's much more of a entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem tool, resource, perhaps. An asset map, which sounds a little bit cold, but when we talk about communities or localities, we are looking at the people, places, and things that make up the region, especially if we're talking about it in the context of innovation, entrepreneurialism, connection, and so on. In the innovator context, these could be entrepreneurs and innovators, explicitly. They could be startups and small businesses, maker spaces, educational resources like facilities, or I would add museums in there, learning places of import, of note, and anything else that constitutes what I usually refer to as an entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, all the elements. Just like in a real ecosystem, a biological ecosystem, weather, flora, fauna, access to water, nutritious soil, wind, sun, all these things, they all kind of add up. So an asset map is a collection of those things, but in the equivalent economic ecosystem, the one with the people in it, and some of those other things. Greater Vegas is a strange place, which I have likened to Royal Philips Electronics from the 90s when I used to work there. And they were like this into the 21st century as well, for better or worse. Royal Philips Electronics was a very innovative company. They were spending a lot of money on new developments, technology and otherwise, mostly tech though. It's right there in the name, electronics. They have a storied history and they were putting a lot of effort into making new things, novel ideas in the 1990s and the 21st century. And then Philips sort of broke up into different smaller companies. Philips Semiconductor became, is it NXP, I think? Philips Lighting became Signet, I think. And it's so on and so on. The entire company when I was working there of 160,000 people, though, worldwide, still preferred direct introductions, often in person, which can be tricky, and really did not want to maintain or enable a global directory. So if I wanted to find out who was in charge of the thing that I was working on, like in a related business or a related group or who knows what inside Philips, that was the beginning of a journey that was not going to end easily. The voice of experience. Yes, people in Vegas use LinkedIn. They love LinkedIn here, by the way. They use LinkedIn, but more for broadcasting to connections and to pat each other on the back than for fostering actual communication. This is not a Vegas only thing, but it's certainly a Vegas thing. We'll touch on this more in a moment. But I think LinkedIn has become the illusion of connection, which is very common in social networking, social media, social networking sites. So now it's all about getting views and likes, not necessarily in actually communicating. There is some social media in use, a lot of Instagram and TikTok and YouTube here in Vegas, mostly in the content creator space, with a lot of the what of the who and what appearing in the form of commentary, foodie pics and videos, walking tours of the Strip or downtown or other such places, with something of a drop-off when it comes to interests of local people. So that mostly content creators are looking at tourists and visitors. There are some content creators who look at things from a local perspective, but it's still really aimed at people intending to visit or to perform a tourist-like role wandering around Vegas or if you're a local, you can still enjoy the many things that Vegas has to offer. So you can view these things through the lens of a person who lives here or a person who visits here, a visitor. A lot of people tend to create content that tends to lean more towards people who will be visiting as tourists, so they get more traffic. Ooh, what should I check out when I go visit Vegas? Let's check out the latest in restaurants, the latest in pool-related events, what's the sports book situation, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the content that's created around Vegas is focused on these elements of the fun economy, if you like. And the fun economy, by the way, is a trademarked term. The trademark was granted in February of 2025 to the UNLV Office of Economic Development, for better or worse. Unfortunately, the fun economy does not necessarily include local startups and entrepreneurial endeavors, entrepreneurs themselves, and whatnot. So the fun economy is really leaning more heavily into what visitors come to Vegas for, which is usually professional sports, gaming, the tourist stuff like food and drink, partying, entertainment, residences on the Strip, performances, and so on. And of course, conventions, trade shows, and so on. What about the why, the how, and the local press? If we are filling in the usual news article elements, the who, what, why, when, where, how, who, what, why, when, where, how, yeah. Some people throw wow in there. Vegas has plenty of wow. Just wait till the sun sets. You'll see it all in bright lights. So the others are why and how, which is basically some analysis of events and engagements and whatnot that are happening, basically news of the day. That's the why, and how it all fits together over a longer time horizon. So why did this happen and how does it impact tomorrow and next week? A value of a local press establishment, more than one, if at all possible, more than one establishment, is said to be essential in a modern society so that people know what's happening. They know what's going on. They're informed. And I would tend to agree. An informed public is hopefully a functional public, an informed society, a functional society, etc. Note that there are 2 papers of record mentioned in the statutes for Greater Vegas. I think it's the Nevada revised statutes, but there are 2 papers of record, the last time I checked, that are mentioned in there. The Las Vegas Sun and the Review Journal. And there are several others as well, the Nevada Independent, the Nevada Current. There are even more. Not to mention classic television and radio news that have modernized with online presence. I can't tell you the last time I tuned into a television channel in the classic sense, nor the last time I've listened to radio. Since I got rid of my car, I don't really have a radio around me, But you can certainly stream and download podcasts and watch things on YouTube, listen to them on YouTube and so on. So these classic media outlets that were formerly television and radio can be found online as well, consumed next to a variety of other things, competing other things often. So where are you going to get local news about anything that isn't exciting, fun economy oriented? That's can be a challenge. Journalism and news reporting in general cover all of the elements I have mentioned here. So ideally, there is some mention now and then of people doing things, making things happen, events going on, new places to meet, new elements of the asset map. So the who, what, when, where, why, how, all of that. All of it is newsworthy to some degree in a place where these sorts of things, which constitute a diversified economy or a push towards one, is or are important. This is absolutely the case in Greater Vegas, where most of the world would look at Vegas as the Strip, which is a 4-mile, fairly tiny plot in the Greater Vegas scheme of things. And I can speak to this, by the way. This is what people in other parts of the world know about Vegas. Oh, the Strip. Oh, do you gamble all the time, etc. That's what people know. And they really don't know much about anything but the destination city aspects of this place. So, oh yes, I've been there for a trade show. I've been there for CES. Oh, my friend got married there, whatever it is. They usually have a fairly narrow view, and it isn't often talked about the various other things that happen in the Southern Nevada region, the Clark County area, the Greater Vegas area. Take your pick. What doesn't help this is the tendency for local press outlets, all of them, to lean into that and not spend much time on other matters that probably matter if you are pursuing those other matters. The occasional human interest story does come up, more neighborhood crime than anything else, really, when you get right down to it. More animal cruelty issues than one would hope for, animals being found in sealed containers or taped up, or all kinds of awfulness. Left for dead in the heat. Sometimes, unfortunately, that is the end of those stories. Streets and traffic, various hit and run and other injuries and fatalities and so on. It's a happy collection of headlines. But mostly local media covers crime, politics, construction and demolition, and the fun economy in general, especially closer to the Strip or maybe downtown or maybe Summerlin or some of the other kind of population centers. But it's mostly stuff that can be seen and maybe can be encountered by people visiting the area and maybe some people who live here. A self-reinforcing feedback loop, if you will. Oh, Greater Vegas is all about the things that you already know about, so we'll just keep talking about those because that's what you're interested in. Do you want to talk about startups in Vegas? Meh. Do you want to talk about the Smarter Smart City Challenge? Meh. We really should be making information available from a broad collection of topics to more people in more ways than we are. And we're kind of stuck in the old school thinking, my opinion. Took a little water break there. Hopefully that will help. So now let's talk about Luma and LinkedIn in particular. Luma. There are a variety of social calendar platforms out there. The Eventbrite and Meetup are probably the best known at this point. And I will add that platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn and even Discord have their own event features. Those only complicate things. Those are more calendars to update that don't necessarily interoperate. If you are selling tickets or charging admission for your event or gathering, Eventbrite might be your platform of choice. They do what they do, for better or worse. It kind of works. While Meetup might be your first choice for discoverability. There are certainly plenty of people who publish their gatherings and meetups and social events, networking events, etc., on Meetup. Fun fact, Meetup had an open engineering meetup a long time ago to go over their development process and the state of their redesign and whatnot. This was, I think, 2 owners ago. Meetup has gone through some ownership changes and some cultural changes and whatnot. But that's when I really started looking away from Meetup as a viable platform. Just it was such a mess. So many conflicting goals and the way they were pursuing those goals. As well, Meetup charges a subscription, and this has been especially a more recent development. You basically have to pay to use the platform in general to make it usable. So if you're an organizer, you certainly have to pay after a promotional period. And to be honest, I really haven't looked into the specific pricing. When I was looking at Luma, there was a comparison between Luma and Meetup on costs and whatnot. I don't find Meetup to be a value proposition unless you're charging for events or you somehow use your events to either directly or indirectly generate revenue or something. As a nonprofit, we try to keep everything free. So that gets a little bit tricky. I guess if we took donations or something, but why should we pay for this platform? It's not a good platform. Organizers and the people wishing to participate in meetups are expected to pay subscriptions fees. Otherwise, you get a very basic level of functionality. It's pretty minimal, and it's just not great. It doesn't foster community building if you have to pay a third party to figure out who is attending a meetup. It's kind of laughable, but also pretty antisocial when you really get down to it. And by the way, this becomes important when you go to a meetup with several people and you want to figure out who was there because you failed to, I wish I would have talked to that one person and I didn't get any contact information. They do have some chat features in place. It's kind of a collection of what do we really want to do with Meetup? What do we want to enable and how much do we want to charge for it? And what are people willing to pay for? So it's become, and especially because it's changed hands a couple of times, it's become a how can we make money doing this, which is, of course, part of the impoopification pathway Cory Doctorow talks about. We have been trying a platform that has been around for a little while, a couple of years, I think, at least 2 years, for Luma, Luma, for our events. We still have a Google Calendar for publication and embedding. So that didn't go anywhere. We just haven't, we removed it from our website in favor of Luma for a while. For our gatherings, that can be found on our .org and .foundation websites. These are events open to all, possibly online, but if we do have in-person gatherings, those as well, hackathons, etc. There are some things that Luma could do, but which it hides behind a premium subscription, including an API. But there are a few things right out the gate that are disappointing about Luma. Their choices that they have made, which they're welcome to do it. They are not ideal in my personal opinion and for what we are trying to accomplish. So to keep this part brief, I will point these out, a couple of things, but not go down the rabbit hole too far. We can make an entire episode about it probably. So the big thing, this is a lesson I learned in the food truck world. I don't know if I've talked about that here so much, but food trucks, mobile commerce, mobile customers, they have to intersect at places when a food truck is open, for example. Oh, when is my favorite food truck going to be near me? Right. So that's a calendar synchronization scenario, right? Which day are they going to be here? So if it's published on a calendar, great. Cancellation is a removal though. So, and inside baseball, the vCalendar data structure used in iCalendar Stream supports a status in the vEvent component of the vCalendar, so that an event organizer can be very clear about, the status of the event. This could be, and these are the three choices: tentative, confirmed, or canceled. And they mean exactly what they sound like. The problem, Luma, and in fact, Google Calendar does this too. A canceled event is deleted. It's removed from the calendar. It's no longer visible. It is not shown as canceled. There have been previous, I don't know if Outlook does this, but I've seen this implemented in some tools, and this is the approach I would prefer. A canceled event is still visible, but it is marked as canceled. Why is this important? Wasn't there, I thought I saw an event for tomorrow, and now did I imagine it? There's no reason to add confusion. The event that you thought was there has been canceled. If you had RSVP to it, if you've marked that you are attending, or if you've accepted an invite to it, and the event is canceled, you'll receive a notification, but it should remain on the calendar and be visible as canceled so that anyone who might say, the event is tomorrow. Oh, it's been canceled. Okay. Oh, there's one next week, right? That's important. It's important because people store information in the world. So knowing that what they saw or what they thought they saw or what they heard or what they were told is not imagination. I thought there was an event tomorrow. Yes, it's been canceled, but so it's just deleted. It's gone. I have no evidence that it was ever a part of my awareness. So I think this is a problem. It's not a great option. It's not great, and it's not an option. So ideally there would be an option to leave canceled events visible, but marked as canceled. And you can do this with like an overstrike or, the word canceled is used fairly effectively. So you can use that in an accessible way. So it could be a large font. It could be visible clearly in a screen reader. It can be displayed in a different way. You could have an event calendar that's with just cancellations, so that the entire view of the calendar is all cancellations. So I want to see cancel, or I want to hear or feel, if I want to have a Braille calendar, for example, show me only the canceled things in a separate calendar. Okay, so that should be an option. There are a variety of ways to go. Events that are not complete, i.e. they do not include a virtual meetup link or an in-person location, for example, are marked as tentative, and they are always marked as tentative. Even if they are in the past, they are left as tentative. There is no apparent option for some control over this. So for example, marking an event as confirmed, we're having the event, but only making the location or URL visible to RSVP'd individuals. It does not appear to be in the workflow, I guess. This is an opinionated implementation. It is what it is. I know Meetup does support URL will be made available to those attending, etc. There are reasons to do this. There are reasons to keep the links open and visible and so on. Here, we're having the meetup at this location. Or maybe you don't want to share the location until the day of the event. So I think Luma doesn't do a great job here. And I'm keeping this list short. So it's just the things that are applicable to how I've been trying to apply it. They definitely have their opinionated implementation deployed. And it is what it is. In the more recent past, Luma has leaned into in-person events. So this is particularly important and also disappointing. They use some AI classification, some ML really, to determine whether events are interesting enough to feature on their platform, which makes them more discoverable. So here's what's going on in your neighborhood or whatever. There's still they assign a default keyword if I didn't assign it myself. So they make our Smarter Smart City Challenge a tech tagged event, which is unfortunate because it's not just that, but we're not really discoverable anyway. So you should be more discoverable maybe if you have an in-person event. They explicitly do not feature virtual or online events. So they really want to push in-person meetups, and I totally get that. But it's a choice. It's a highly opinionated choice, and it does serve some particular, but it's an opinionated choice with no apparent option to go another way with this. So this, to me, makes Luma a little bit less useful for some other use cases. So they're really leaning into getting people to gather in person. Meetup doesn't really care. They offer a few other options, but in general, it's a really awful platform the way they've implemented it. There's a couple of shortcomings, the most important of which is that they charge way too much money for the quality of service that they do offer. I could go on, but Luma is sort of interesting to try out. Unfortunately, it's not quite sufficient to use for a broad discovery platform of the what and where in a region. That's my opinion. I will be honest, I have not explored connecting our gatherings calendar to our Luma calendar so that I can synchronize them. That was on my to-do list. It's still a thing I would check out. I'll do that, and we'll probably maintain Luma as a secondary platform so that it's in the mix, especially if we can have an in-person event that's discoverable. The fact that they limit the virtual event discovery is a detractor, to be honest. But if Luma works out as a secondary platform, it can remain. The price is right. We don't need any of the premium features if we can build them ourselves, which is another reason to consider purpose-built platform development as a component of innovation in general. But really, the digital calendar has come so far with so much interoperability and sensible features, even with its old transport and protocol approach. iCalendar streams with the vCalendar, vEvent, vToDo. They're all capital letters with semicolons and so on. So, although to be honest, if you look at the Toon structure, TOON, which is to be used for machine learning, for LLM chat prompts, it cuts down the extraneous data. The iCalendar streams kind of look like that, kind of. So the pendulum swings both ways. So the AI classification, I read that already. So yeah, we'll keep Luma around as a secondary if it works out, but digital calendars have come so long. It doesn't make sense to not support this at locality and region scale for just community calendars that can all speak to each other. Platforms that are built for monetization and limited discovery, so they tend to keep event details close to the vest. They may or may not publish a calendar link. They may publish a calendar link that you can subscribe to in your calendar, but it will be a link that links to the platform's calendar, not to the organizer's calendar, etc. There's just a whole bunch of stuff. And Luma does, by the way, share a iCalendar subscription link to a calendar that you may be maintaining on their platform. So kudos to them. They get points for doing that. It looks okay. It's a standard vCalendar file. The calendar is still hosted on that platform. I did not explore whether they flow through to an organizer's source calendar, and that's for another discussion another time. But that's our smart calendar approach. Hint. But in general, these platforms try to keep the people on their platforms, and so they do that for better or worse. If they're monetizing, they obviously want you to stay on their platform and not go somewhere else. The Luma, certainly Meetup, even Eventbrite, not ideal for what we're talking about here today, as far as getting the word out far and wide using standard calendar tools and not being tied to a particular platform. For example, if I'm using Luma, I should also be able to use other platforms to cast a wider net, but I shouldn't have to maintain platform calendars across this universe. So that, earlier I mentioned that Discord, Facebook, LinkedIn, they all have their own little event infrastructure. If you're trying to maintain an event calendar, but also trying to reach out to many people, and you're maintaining variations on your calendar on these different platforms, you know what I'm talking about. Information sharing at community, locality, and region scale should be easier. The technology has existed forever. If you're trying to do large scale things or reach out to a lot of people using these standard tools, we should be able to use them in the ways that they've been designed, and so that they account for some of the things that you need when you're scaling up for that reach. So I think platform specific calendar engagement tools could be better, could be purpose built. Honestly, I don't know that Luma would fit into, for example, if the city of Las Vegas, city of North Las Vegas, city of Henderson, city of Boulder City, Clark County, some unincorporated regions, could they use Luma for what they want to accomplish? I would say no. Definitely built for smaller organizations. I found Luma to be somewhat interesting during CES, for example. Some companies were using Luma to create geographically discoverable events so that people visiting from other places would be able to discover, oh, if you're in Vegas for CES, here's a particular event category that might be interesting because you're not normally here. You wouldn't have subscribed to or been aware of calendars for these sort of fleeting presences. Now LinkedIn, my least favorite topic in the whole world. This is one we've gone into before, but let us look at a particular use case where we are trying to get the word out about the Smarter Smart City Challenge here in Greater Vegas. Apropos, timely, we have a page. We have 122 followers as of this recording, and we have, as usual, 0 engagement. This is something I found. We have over 900 followers of our Innovate for Vegas page. Nobody really reads or engages with anything. Nobody reshares anything. Nobody comments on anything. And when I say nobody, it's like 1% or 0%. It's not noteworthy in particular. Why is this? Because LinkedIn pages are essentially follow and forget. Where following a page is it's sometimes a matter of supporting something. Oh, I would be interested in following this page to get that number up. Look, they have more followers now. I'm a part of that. So it's not totally useful, but okay. Some people brag about their follower counts, especially lately. It's becoming more and more a point of pride and perhaps advertising of services. If you are a brand manager that makes LinkedIn a tool that you have your way with, then you can charge companies to manage their LinkedIn presence. So you need to be very clear that I've grown my following from 5,000 to 1 million in the last 10 days. How did I do it? Pay me. So that's a business. So someone doing a favor, okay, you're following the page. Great, thank you. If you never engage with it in any way, then it doesn't really do much. And then sometimes a matter of real interest, but ultimately a signal to the LinkedIn algorithm, which is itself a platform favoring scheme to feed their users for their benefit. And I don't mean the user's benefit, I mean LinkedIn's benefit. They want to get those advertising dollars. They want to have people signing up for premium, etc. So it's not necessarily to the benefit of the page or profile owner the way that they deliver these items on a feed. I'm less and less a fan of that word. The LinkedIn algorithm is not a secret, though more recently there's a lot of mention of the platform itself concerning changes to the algorithm, what they feature, how they determine if they will feature something and where it will be ranked, etc., which impacts what is shown to whom and why. This makes trying to get a message out to those followers something of a full-time job. You got to feed that algorithm, and you got to post a certain number of times and pictures and links and whatever it is. I just want to tell people that this challenge is coming up, and it's going to be lasting from March 1st until January, probably like January 5th or something. Good luck, me. While some, especially in government and related agencies and organizations in and around Greater Vegas, use LinkedIn as a primary tool of outreach, I have been told that by people in roles in those entities. And most, the thing to think about, most who are not following the correct people associated with those industries or second order contacts, or maybe not using LinkedIn at all or as much as the algorithm would prefer, are not seeing some important information, which is also not covered in our local press outlets. So you either come across things at random out on the internet, or you happen to be searching for something, or someone mentioned something, or you are using LinkedIn and you are following the correct people and or pages. Otherwise, you may as well, you will not know or have access to the same level of information as those who take the time and have the correct followers. Now, here's a non-trivial element of the LinkedIn scheme. It is a personal network graph, which can be useful. Like, I have connected to individuals. I can follow a page, and you cannot block someone from following a page without going through a lot of trouble. But if you're passively following a page, nobody's going to block you. Like, yeah, you're following the page. You got my follower number up. Okay, fine. But if you never engage with anything on the page, okay, not a big deal. But personal network connections can be blocked for any reason. I think if you're a premium member, you cannot be blocked for any reason. You'd have to be reported. Anyway, generally speaking, it's very easy to cut people off from this connection graph. So it can be useful to have this graph, but it can also work against information sharing when the graph is overly personalized. So case in point, if someone in your local government takes offense at a comment you make on something they post, which may be government related, right? So someone in a role for the government posts themselves, not as a government user or on a government page, but they post themselves, hey, this is happening. If someone in your local government takes offense at a comment you make on that something that they posted, they can block you on the platform. So you are no longer following them, or you're no longer connected to them, which means even if you're following them, you cannot see what they are posting anymore, what they are posting personally. That may mean the valve governing the information you have access to is closed in that case. This happens, and there's really little recourse, which makes LinkedIn for personal networking fine, but for civic networking, for staying in touch with people in the city government, or with the tasks and roles and pursuits that they are engaged in as civic employees, right? City government employees, city staffers, part of the bureaucracy, related agencies, NGOs, etc. For examples, all of those, it can be profoundly problematic if you are suddenly cut off from this information resource. If you're thinking this sounds like the voice of experience, then you would be correct, and it is a real shame. In my situation, it was somebody in the Office of Economic Development. I pointed out, it wasn't a caustic comment. I just pointed out something like a nuance to something that they had posted. I said, well, what about considering this other thing, whatever it was? It was a completely legitimate comment. In my opinion, this person felt it was not, and they chose to block me. So I actually contacted the director, the person that reports directly to the city manager, who was in charge of economic development. And I said, why did this person block me? I made a comment about this. Oh, I'll talk to them, etc. It becomes a It becomes a like he said, she said, oh, let's work this out. And no. You work for the government and you're publishing information that is of public interest. You should not be able to cut people off on a whim for whatever reason. So it's kind of silly to have those channels in place and in common use when they can be cut off so easily. I maintain my comment was nothing block worthy. You can block people if they're harassing you, but if they make a simple comment, a simple statement, or try to contribute to a conversation, especially among city staff, etc., this makes a platform like LinkedIn less than ideal and, in fact, problematic in general. So you can couple this with the notion that participating in some community elevation activity is often coupled with the person or people involved. So it is treated as a personal favor to engage, reshare, and so on, and we see a completely dysfunctional information sharing environment with too many weaknesses to pursue. Someone who has followed the Innovate for Vegas Foundation page on LinkedIn, or maybe the Smart City Vegas page on LinkedIn, which concerns the Smarter Smart City Challenge coming up, they may think, oh, I'm not really interested in what Dan Hugo has to say. Even though these pages exist not as personal pages, but as pages for a 501c3 public charity and for a fiscally sponsored community elevation endeavor that is open to all and is not an effort by one person, okay, mechanically perhaps, but generally speaking, you're not doing a person a favor, you're trying to be a part of a community elevation endeavor. So people tend to personalize content on LinkedIn, that's a problem. It is not a true communication platform. It is too heavily or too tightly coupled to personal networks. There's a time and a place for that. So the challenge is real. And this is the final section. So thanks for hanging on. The challenge is real. The information sharing challenge is a real thing, and it is honestly a component of the Smarter Smart City Challenge in general, a focus that any number of people could tackle to make the greater Vegas area a member of the innovative future rather than the old school status quo silo of the present. Our cities and our county do make some effort to share information with online resources and so on their own websites, not necessarily LinkedIn. They have their public communications staffers that do the Twitter and the Facebook and the old school stuff. And there are people that still rely on those. They have online resources themselves, though, and probably the statutory publication of printed notices on paper. And they probably have placements in the local papers of record, also statutorily, right? So you got to announce things so many weeks in advance, upcoming public meetings, public hearings, etc. These are all old school and necessary, and that's fine, but not really sufficient and certainly not a component of a true global innovation hub that makes maximal and intelligent and functional use of the tools we all have at our disposal, or that we have at our disposal. Some do, some don't. That's why you got to cover all the bases, and that's fine. I'm not complaining about that at all. Given our focus of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, namely innovation, it's right there in the name, thinking outside the box of history is a primary pursuit. Innovation is about looking forward, but considering the past, but not dwelling in it too much, but also not forgetting it. I've heard people say, why do we even want to do email? We should just use blockchain. Well, because email is still anyway. That we can talk about that some other time. We really are hoping others will take that on, this notion, with the Smarter Smart City Challenge to join in future-looking thinking, if not participating in our own initiatives. So we have our stuff that we're working on, and the people can pick whatever they want to work on. Never the twain shall meet? No, I hope not. I hope there's some overlap. By all indications over the years, though, it's a steeper hill to climb to get people to participate in ongoing initiatives. So we'll see what happens. This is all a grand experiment. So we can leave this episode with the notion that doing things the same way as always and handing over communication, awareness, and to a great extent outreach to third parties in this modern era where purpose-built tools and platforms that make real and useful connections with the real world and with the people in it, they exist. This is not innovation to rely on, just use Twitter and LinkedIn. It is the status quo, and this is not on our agenda to keep things as they are. Innovation is often about change, even if it's about tuning. And speaking of, stay tuned, of course, and consider participating in the Smarter Smart City Challenge, where we can do some purpose building to actually make our smart city smarter based on what you yourself see, hear, experience, and would like to see made better. If you want something done right, as the saying goes, even if you yourself do not reside in the greater Vegas area, because for the 2.5, not quite, million people that live in Clark County in the greater Vegas area, there are still 38.5 million people who visit this area every year. They may have some ideas too, and it doesn't make sense to turn ideas away, not in a global hub of innovation. And that is what we have to say about that. I hope we can get the word out effectively after March 1st as we get things moving for real, as we reach out to individuals in, around, near, maybe even not near Greater Vegas, and see if they'd like to turn their activities around them that need a little bit of help, turn their ideas about those activities or things that could be done better, things that could be activities. Let's turn those ideas into action. Let's innovate. Let's see if we can implement some things, and we'll see what unfolds between March 1st and January of 2027. Thanks for listening as always. Take care, and we'll see you in the Smarter Smart City Challenge. Bye-bye.